Hey friends, this is going to be an update video on bike related topics. Here we are. It's been a year since the Ancient Lakes race, February of 2020. I'm going to be doing a updated review on the Rkt-9. I rode this bike into the fall and we had some pretty good weather. I was riding in some damp and wetter conditions and I ended up wearing things out and had pulled the bike out, cleaned it up. Thankfully the temperatures have warmed up just enough to get the water turned on to wash it. So let me go through the reconditioning that I've done this week. So first off, I knew my brakes needed to be bled because last time I rode this bike, my front brake, I had to pump just to get it to work. Went ahead and bled them. Thankfully, the dot fluid that came out was not dirty. I was able to just pressurize a bit and get them back to really working well. I also noticed the brake pads were pretty worn. I bought new pads and then realized I got enough material to last for a few months here, depending on how much I'm going to ride this bike. The other thing was I knew this chain was near end of life, is on the Park Tool 0.5 stretch on it, and I went and measured it this week and it was 0.75, so clearly needed to be replaced. I had already ordered that ahead of time knowing I needed to do that. Also put a new cable on because it had been really close to 2 years. Last year, I didn't ride this bike quite as much. I put off some of this maintenance, so normally I wouldn't have let so much go. Then I had also worn out the rear tire. You can see the old tires hanging here. I was running a recon race on the rear and the Mezcal out of Vittoria in the front. And I went with something a little bit wider and trying the Maxxis Aspen. So I'd gotten that here at 2.4. I got that put on, set up tubeless, the peyote on the back here. So Vittoria, for whatever reason, I'm seeming to mix brands every time I put new tires on. I like both Maxxis and Vittoria. This is a 2.35. It actually measures a little over 2.2. I put the calipers on it, so I'll run the pressure down. I usually run about 18 psi in the back. We'll see how it goes. I'm thinking of putting a 2.4 at some point in the rear, but and we'll see how it goes. I've never run a peyote before. Supposed to be pretty fast rolling, like the Aspen in the front here. Now this is a 2.4 and I've never ridden a front or a 2.4. It's got very low knobs, supposed to have really good rolling resistance and then some pretty good side traction. Let's see, what else? Basically I went through every bolt, checked, greased, checked the hubs, everything was good, the bottom bracket's good, greased pivots, and recalibrated my shock pressure for sag and all that. I actually rebuilt the Crank Brothers pedals, re-greased. I think that's about it. But also, it was just a realization that going through every bolt's a pretty good idea, especially if you're going to go race. So I've had the pivots come loose. I've had my cage come loose before. It's always a good idea. Anyway, looking forward to that. I'll update more on the video after the race or before and all that. It's going to be a staged time trial, so we're going to let riders go every 10 seconds, and we will see how that goes. Hey there, friends. Update from the Ancient Lakes Sage Brush Scramble Year 2. I did not do any pre-race video. I was carpooling and I was going to do a GoPro, but it's just too much monkeying around, so everything went well. So I'm back in town. I guess the highlight was the weather. I mean, it was mid-50s and it felt like 60s when you've been in Eastern Washington. As everybody got through the race safely, I did have one pedal strike that sent me flying off the bike. So this this area is loaded with rock. It's actually a very fun place to ride. It's very open, sagebrush, rock cliffs. Last year I also clipped and I almost went over the bike. This time, thankfully, I landed on my side and not on any rocks. All good. I jumped right back up and kept going. I hadn't even ridden the bike until I got to the venue with all the new chain and everything, and the new tires, loved it. Especially that Aspen in the front, running about 17 psi and all the rock, no issues. It's a 2.4, so shifting, everything was good. So a wrap up of today's race. I've got the race results and I'm going to show the course and just talk about a couple things that happened. So I'm just going to screen share and go through the results. The weather was unbelievable. I wanted to stay out there. It was Light wind, 50s, hit 56. It felt like it was 60. And I'll show the Strava details. Actually, why don't I do that first? Got my Garmin uploaded, and here we go. So 15.61 miles, 1 hour and 15 minutes and 2 seconds total moving time, 898, almost 900 feet of climbing. I don't use a power meter. I just ignore all the energy estimated power on this. Let's see. I did start my Garmin right at the beginning. So I hit start, and then the guy waved me through, shortly thereafter. So this is pretty close to where the official time ended up. Ancient Lakes, this is in central Washington, and it's a really interesting topography out there. This virtual picture behind me in video here is of Ancient Lakes from last year's race. The weather looked almost identical, except the wind, it was much cooler last year and the wind was blowing. Very interesting. This sits up on these bluffs, these plateaus above the Columbia River here. This is probably, I don't know, what is it, about 40 minutes from Moses Lake, and it's about 2.5 hours from Spokane, from my neck of the woods. Of course, if I zoom out, you can see it's surrounded, it's all this farmland up on the flat part here, and then it drops down to the Columbia Basin. Just one more point of reference, I guess, is that Highway 90 is just south. Yeah, there it is. There's Highway 90. So that's a very memorable part of Highway 90, because if you're driving east from Seattle, after you get over the Cascades and down past Ellensburg, you're flat landing for, a couple hours there until you hit the Columbia Gorge. The closest city is Quincy, Washington. And you can't see in the satellite view, but of course, you never can see the elevation change, but there's these shadows because these are steep cliffs all around. So it's sitting in this little plateau. You've got this high point going right between, you've got these lakes, and we start and park up here. And I'll bring up, you can see it in the bottom of the screen, profile, elevation profile. Again, only 900 feet of climbing, so it's really rolling. And the most difficult thing about this course, if you've never been out there, is that it's got a lot of twisty, windy, sagebrush rock. It's a great trail, actually, but if you're trying to race at speed and you're twisting and turning around blind corners, you are waiting for that rock to be right off to the side. I clipped the pedal a couple times, and I actually had one severe pedal strike that threw me off the bike, so that was not fun. But luckily I landed on just dirt. My saddle caught me in the back of my right leg, and that was a stinger. I mean, it's sore right now, and I'm gonna ice it later. But the best thing to do when you crash like that is you jump back on the bike as long as you can. That was the second lap, probably 2/3 of the way through it. It's a fun course, though. There's a lot of kind of open sections that give you a little bit of speed, but any of the downhill, the climbing's short, which is great, but that means your descent is also short. It's up, down, and pretty flat, but windy. These the red indicators on Strava really don't, of course, show you the detailed twisty turnies that you're doing. So let me stop sharing and go back to the results. So I raced Cat 2. We did the 15.5 miles. And I was in the age bracket, 50 plus, 50 to 59. So I finished second out of all the 50 to 59 Cat 2s. That's exactly what I did last year. I also cut my lap time down by a couple of minutes. I was doing about 39, 40-minute laps last year. 40 plus 40, that's 80. So it was an hour and like 20 minutes. Here I am, an hour and 14. Cut on 5 minutes plus off last year's time. And there was 3 DNFs for my category, so actually I'm second out of 11. So my training has mostly been indoors, and I do get a little bit formal about it. I try to hit some 4 days a week on the bike, at least an hour, and I mix it up with interval durations, and I won't go on through all my training, but I have been pretty consistent with that and very happy with this time. As far as totals for Cat 2, I did finish, for all Cat 2 riders, male, age 15 and older, I was 8th out of 42 riders. 19 and older, I was 6th, and that's 30 7 riders total. I just want to finish and get out there. It's an excuse to get in the car, drive a little bit, and enjoy some time outside on the bike. Keeps me sane. And if you don't push yourself, for me, cycling fits into my healthcare plan. It fits into my mental health care plan and social aspect of it, although that was curtailed a bit this past year. I've always advocated for being physically active, but I feel like if you can find something that you actually enjoy, and there's nothing wrong with going to a gym, and you can certainly ride your Peloton or your indoor thing all the time, be on a treadmill, but we keep trying, right? All right, I'm going to wrap up this video. I appreciate you watching, and I invite you to please get outside as we head into spring, and we'll see you in the next video.